Slave.
Oh, no.
Get on your knees.
You are?
Last time I checked, I was. Better check.
Do this first.
Yeah.
Okay, do whatever.
Oh, I think Palmer likes the baby
Go ahead,
Jesus.
and I'll direct.
Okay.
Oh, just a minute. Dig it. Okay, Tabitha and I are going to do this. Okay, where's Joe? Oh, there she is.
She can be the mother.
Oh, I've been looking
Yeah,
all
have her the
over.
mother, Mama.
That's
Careful, she's got a hurt foot.
there. Okay. Now, Tabitha, Aaron, if you're not going to do that, then you sit right.
A long, long time ago, in the night just before Christmas, a little child, all alone, wandered the streets of a large city. There were a great many fathers and mothers hurrying home with bundles of presents for their little ones, one after the other, bound for home to celebrate the happy time with their children. This little child seemed to have no home, but wandered up and down, looking into the windows and watching the lights. No one seemed to notice the little child except Jack Frost, who bit the bare toes and fingers, and the north wind, who almost brought tears to the child's eyes with his blowing. It was cold, oh, very cold that night. Up and down the street the little child passed, and the walks were all snowy and icy. The child had on neither shoes nor stockings, but though it was cold, the little one was happy, for it was Christmas Eve, and the whole world seemed happy too. Everywhere the light was streaming out of the windows, and if one looked in, there could be seen the beautiful candles and the Christmas trees. In some of the houses, the trees were loaded with presents for the children, and in one place into which the little child looked, the boys and girls were playing and skipping, and their merry laughter rang so loudly through the house that it could be heard through the thick walls and doors out in the street. The little child was excited with them and clapped her hands and said, "Oh, they are so happy in there. Surely they will share with me and let me come into this warm, bright room and sing and play." And the little feet tripped up the great wide staircase, and without a fear the child tapped softly on the door. And the door opened. There stood a tall footman. He looked at the little child, but sadly shook his head and said, "Go down off the steps. There is no room for you here." Look sorry. And he said it, for he probably remembered his own little ones at home and was glad that they were not out in the cold. Through the open door, a light, oh, such a bright light shone, and it was so warm that the child turned away into the cold and darkness, not knowing why the footman spoke so. For surely the children would have loved to have another little companion to join in the joyous Christmas Eve festival. But the children did not know that the child had not. The street seemed colder and darker to the child than before, and the bright windows were not nearly so bright because the child was sad. But all along, on both sides of the wide street, the light streamed out, and it was almost as bright as day, and the beauty all about made the little child happy again. The great city was full of happy homes that night, and the cold outside was entirely forgotten. All remembered only the happy times, and no doubt thought that every single person in the whole wild world was happy too. Farther and farther along, down where the homes were not quite so large or beautiful, the little child wandered. There seemed to be children inside of nearly all the houses, and they were dancing and frolicking about. There were Christmas trees in nearly every window, with beautiful dolls and toys. There were trumpets and picture books and all sorts of nice things. And in one place, a sweet little lamb made of white wool was hanging on a tree for one of the children. The child, stopping before this window, looked and looked at the beautiful things, and creeping up to the glass, gently tapped on the pane. A little girl came to the window and looked out into the dark street and saw the child. But she only frowned, and she shook her head. "Come some other time, for we cannot take care of you now." And then she went away. The little child turned back into the cold again and went sadly on, saying, "Will no one share the Christmas with me? The light is so bright, and I love it so." The child wandered on and on, scarcely seeing the light now on account of tears. The street became darker and narrower. Farther and farther the little one traveled. It grew late. Scarcely anyone was out to meet the child as it walked, and all the outer world was still and cold. Ahead there suddenly appeared a bright single ray of light that shone right through the darkness into the child's eyes. The child smiled and said, "I will go and see if they will share their Christmas with me." Hastening past all the other houses, the little one went straight up to the window pane from which the light was streaming. It was such a poor little low house, but the child only saw the light in the window, for there was neither curtain nor shade. What do you suppose the light came from? Nothing but a tiny tallow candle. But it seemed to the little wanderer almost as bright as the sun. That was because the child was glad again. The candle was placed in an old cup with a broken handle, and right in the same cup there was a twig of evergreen, and that was all the Christmas tree they had. And who do you suppose was in the house? A beautiful mother with her children. The children were looking into their mother's faces and listening to her words. A few bright coals were burning in the fireplace, which made it light and warm within. The child crept closer to the pane and knocked. They all listened. "Shall I open the door, dear mother?" the little boy asked. "Certainly, my child. No one should be left out in the cold on the beautiful Christmas Eve. Open the door and let the stranger come in." The door was thrown open. The little boy looked into the darkness. When he saw the child, he put out his hand to help. The child went into the light and warmth. Then the mother put out her hands and touched the little child. The children said, "Dear little ones, you are cold and weary. Come and let us warm you, and then you shall have some of our Christmas." The children went away from their mother, and the mother gathered the little stranger to her, and the children stood at her knee and warmed the cold hands and feet. The mother put out her arms. Her mother put out her arms about the little one, and the candle and the firelight shone all over them, and everything was so still. And the mother's sweet voice in the stillness said, "Little ones," she said, "shall I tell you the real Christmas story?" The children said, "Yes." For so the mother began. Many, many years ago, this very night, some shepherds were out in the plains watching their sheep. The wee little lambs were asleep, and the large sheep were sleeping too. The stars shone bright and clear above, and all was very still below. The shepherds sat beside each other without a word, leaning on their crocks and hardly moving. Suddenly, a great light shone all around.